everybody, it's Carla from Casey Creates, and I was thinking maybe you'd like to clay with me today. I'm working on some projects for my class tomorrow. I try to do demo pieces, and sometimes they have to be set up. Oh, I didn't explain. I rolled this lace into the clay so that I could get the impression of the clay. And sometimes I try to make my projects the day before so they have time to set up. And I use all kinds of random tools to create my pieces. This is just a wooden frame, and I really like the shape of this frame. So I'm going to actually, I think I'll do oval today. I also have a rectangle. These are called press plates. So I want to show you how they work. So first I'm going to trace around the frame. And I need 2 of them. So I'm going to trace around both of them. And then I'm going to cut them out, and I just use my needle tool, but I hold it straight up and down because it gets a nice straight edge. And if I need to bevel it, I would hold it at an angle, but for this one I don't. And I'm just working on top of a piece of drywall. Some people call it sheetrock. And so we get a bunch of scraps donated at the studio, and we just take masking tape and put it around the edges to keep the plaster on the inside from crumbling into our clay, because clay and plaster do not mix, and it works pretty well. So then all I have to do is peel these off. I may lose a little bit of my impression here because I'm going to press these with my press plate. But first I want to clean off the edges a little bit. And I can clean it up better later when you wait for your clay to be leather hard or a little beyond leather hard. You can clean up those little scrappy bits better than you can now. Right now they just get little sticky, mushy pieces all over, so I don't try to clean it up as much now as I do later. And then I'm going to do what's called press plate. Now I'm doing this a little backwards. Normally I would press it decorated side up because it would be a dish. But I'm working on using these for a vase. And I know this is a nice pillow, but it's all I have for cushion. So what you do is you just lay it flat and center your press plate as best you can. This helps having the frame. And then I'm going to press in a rocking motion all the way around, and it's going to give me a nice indentation. In most cases this would be for a dish, but like I said, I'm turning mine into a vase, and I'll show you each step as I go, so hopefully it'll make sense to you. Now my edges will be nice and decorated, and then I'm going to put a cross embellishment in the center, but I'm explaining it now, but it'll make much more sense as we go through the process. But as you can see, it's now almost like a dish, and there's a bit of a curve to it. So I'm going to put it back on my board to let it firm up some and do the other side. I actually didn't lose much of my imprint either. So that's good. So now we'll do the second one. And I'm just gonna, again, line it up here and do this little rocking method to make the edges bow up, like so. And you really have to wait till your clay is at least soft leather hard. If you get too leather hard though, your press plate could cut through and end up making it like a cookie cutter. We don't want that either. But that's why we're using this soft pillow or foam rubber, a nice piece of foam rubber. I kind of like using this pretty pillow as my foam piece. Alright, so now I have my second one. Just remove that, and I can always reshape those. It's going to be a real narrow vase, and I'm going to leave them to firm up a little bit, like so. And then after they're a little more leather hard, I can put them together. So I want to now score and slip both of my pieces together. As you can see now why my hands are always such a treacherous wreck. I love clay, but it's no friend to beautiful skin on your hands, that's for sure. But what I'm doing is I've got this little piece of comb. It works great for a scoring tool. I usually have a serrated metal rib that I use, but I have gravitated to this comb. My sister is the one who clued me into just getting a bag of cheap combs from the Dollar Tree and cutting them into pieces, and they get right down into all the little nooks and crannies. They work great. I pass them out to my students and they all tell me, oh, I love using the little comb. So if you haven't used the comb as a scoring tool, I recommend it. It's a great little tip. And then I just take my sponge, or you could use a paintbrush, or you could use your fingers, and I just gently wipe water around the edges, which is what we call slip. Slip is like liquidy clay, but in this case I'm just going to use a little bit of water. You don't want to rub so hard that you smooth out the score marks, but you do want it to look a bit shiny, and that way you know you have enough on. And then I'm going to take this piece and carefully set it on top of my other piece to form somewhat of a hollow piece. It's kind of like a clamshell right now. I'm going to lift this because it's not quite even. There we go. And then I'm going to give it some time to firm up. Now if you wanted to, you could stuff it with some paper, but I think this will be fine. Plus I'm opening this into a vessel, and then I'll be able to bow it out even more later. But for now, I just wanted to put them together, give them a firm little pinch, and then you have to wait for clay. You can't get ahead of the process or things start collapsing. So I've got to walk away from this piece for a little while and work on something else and give it some time to firm up. So I've given it a little time to firm up, and now I'm going to try to cut a straight bottom. So I'm not really using my ruler to measure as much as I'm just trying to use it for a straight edge, because I want this to be a vase that will stand up. So I'm holding my knife flush with the ruler and just drawing a straight line, and then I'm going to cut through both pieces, and it should leave a nice kind of an oval opening at the bottom. It's still pretty soft. It's very humid here, so I try to give my clay time to dry out, but it takes a bit longer when it's really humid out like this. So what I have here is the bottom piece, and I'm going to manipulate this into a pedestal. That's my goal anyway. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to stand this up, and I'll have to work it a little bit to make sure it's level. And then I'm going to do the same thing on top. I'm going to cut an opening, but this time I want to cut a semicircle. I hope you can see. I'm going to just put my little metal cutter here and make a groove. I'll turn it and try to do the same. Actually, it won't really matter. I'm just going to use my paring knife, another really cheap tool you can get at the Dollar Tree. You can have a really nice fettling knife, but I find these work just as well. And then I'm slicing it open. So you can see that's going to be the opening to my vase. But I'm going to put a collar up on the top as well, which you don't have to do. And then I'm going to, now that I have the bottom cut off, I'm going to place it on a slab of clay that I've textured. This is just a scrap piece, but I want the texture on the bottom. And the way I find out where to score and slip is I just take my sponge and I dampen the bottom of my pot, and I just give it a little smush on top. I got a little too much water, and then lift it off. It got a little too wet, so I can't see real well, but then I take my scoring tool and just score wherever I see the ring of water. And again, I want to score really well, both the piece and the clay. And then just, can you see the score marks? They're pretty generous score marks, deep, because I really want this to be secure. And what happens is the water or slip will go in those grooves, and when it dries it helps make a nice tight seal. And then I just trace around the piece, leaving about 1/8 of an inch of clay, because I'm going to use that excess clay to blend it in. So I'm just taking my knife and trimming off the excess clay, except for about 1/8 of an inch. And then I think I have my, I didn't bring my wooden knife. Normally I have my wooden knife, but since I don't, I'll just use my finger. And I'm just compressing the clay all the way around, and that's making a nice seal for the foot. So I'm just going to kind of blend it with my fingers, and then I'm going to take the angled edge of my knife and trim it off like so. I'll probably still put another foot on the bottom or a pedestal, We'll see how it goes. Sometimes I make it up as I go. But you can see the bottom now. It has a decorative foot. And I'm going to blend the excess clay so that it's kind of rounded and not too sharp, so that if this ends up just being the foot, it won't scratch. And again, I can wait till it's about medium leather hard and it'll clean up a lot easier. So now I have a foot on my pot. Now if you wanted, you could take a tool and go in and bow out the belly of the pot, but I want to put a cross embellishment on the front, so I'm going to leave mine flat. I also want to put a bit of a collar on the front, or on the neck. So I'm going to wedge up a little more clay and work on making a collar for the top. So I thought I would go ahead and show you how I'm going to put the collar on this piece. And let me move this out of the way. So what I've done is I've rolled out a slab of clay, fairly thin. It's thinner than the actual vase itself. And then I want to put the lace impression in again. I'm just using my little pony roller here, rolling it into the clay for the same texture as the pot. And then I'm going to cut, well, first I'll peel this off. Then I'm going to cut a circle right about here. Kind of stuck, didn't it? I'm just working here on my table. It's not like working in the studio, but it's working so far. And this is about a 3.5 inch circle, so I'm going to mark at 1 1/4 and try to just eyeball a straight line. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to cut sort of a smiley face shape. I have one here. Let's see if I can make it about the same. And then I'm just going to cut a little bit of an arch to get a smiley face like that. And I'll do one more. So I'm just working on a piece of white poster board here. Normally I'd work on canvas covered board or canvas covered table, which keeps my clay from sticking. Alright, so I just did that again so that you could see what I did. And I have extras here in my bag. Okay, and so the way we're going to attach these is by putting them on the inside of the lip, and then this edge will be left for adding extra decoration or embellishment. But again, I have to score and slip. I can find my scoring tool. There it is. So I'm just going to score on the inner rim of the lip with some generous score marks. And then I'm going to score, let me move it a little bit for you to see. I'm going to score on the wide bottom part of the smiley face, because this is going to be score mark to score mark, texture side out, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll show you here in just a second. And sometimes when I just want to cover it quickly, I use a big wide brush like this so that I can quickly swipe the water without smoothing out my score marks. So a little bit of slip, which is water in this case. And now I'm going to attach this to the inner lip like so. I'm just giving it a firm but gentle squeeze. I don't want to alter the shape too much. So that's on. And then the same, except I want to score just a little bit here because these are going to meet. Alright, and then a little more slip or water here and here. Try to get it in camera for you. And just press and press and squeeze them together. And then once they're in like this, you can manipulate it and shape it, like bowling it out a little bit more, which is what I'm going to do. And it's not even here, I'll just trim it off a teeny bit. There we go. And then I want to flare it out just a little bit. So I think you can see it now. So if you see this edge here, I'm planning to add a little more refinement there with decoration or something. But I'll work on that. Give it more of a press maybe. And bow it out a little bit more. So I'm just calling this putting on a collar of sorts. Okay, and then I'll work on that on the edges and the seams and just make sure they're not gonna pull apart in any way. And then the last thing I'm going to do is adhere my applique to the front and the foot. And now I'd like to roll a coil that I'm going to flatten out a little bit. I'm going to make this the lip for the collar piece. And the way I find it easiest is rather than cutting out a flat, long strip of clay, I try to roll a nice even coil, which is one of my favorite things to do. I love rolling coils by hand. And then I just flatten it a little bit, and then take my lace. Actually, I'm gonna roll on top of the lace because this poster board tends to be sticky. So I'm going to just lay this down on the lace and give it a good roll. I'm going to attempt to flatten it out nice and thin. And it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, because I'm going to wrap it around the lip, like so. Alright, so now it's nice and thin, and when I peel it off, it'll have the impression of the lace, like that. And because this is fairly soft clay, I don't really have to score too much. Let's see if I can get both in frame for you. I think it'll be easier to work with two pieces. And then I'm going to add a little slip. I've misplaced my brush. It's here, working in tight corners. Here it is. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water, which we're calling slip. There we go. Make sure it's level. And then a little bit on here. And then I just want to put it almost halfway around. And right now it's looking like it's going to stay there, but it's not. I'm going to wrap it around. So you kind of lay it halfway between the collar and then gently roll it over, and it's called a wrapped lip. And it gives it another dimension. And I think it helps finish it off nicely when you can do it like that. So that's how I do a wrapped lip. And then I have this, I actually have strips to do them on the side. I'm going to try it and see if I like it. I may not add them. I don't want it to look too bulky. But I have some flat textured ones here, and you can always mix the textures too, like use a slightly different pattern. Is that showing up? And then give it a pinch, and that just kind of helps finish it off. So I think I will go ahead and do the wrapped edges. Like so. Yeah, I like that. And then I'm going to do the other side. And I basically did the same thing. I just flattened out a coil and wrapped it so that it's halfway. And if it breaks, that's okay, because it's very textured. And that's all you have to do. Just give it a good squeeze, make sure it's on there nicely. And what will happen is when I glaze these, they'll have a nice amount of, the glaze will break where all of these different edges are, and it'll make it really beautiful. So I don't know if you can tell, but I went ahead and put both side seams on with that same textured strip. And all I'm going to do now is put on my embellishment. I don't know why I decided to do a cross. I am a believer, and I'm very grateful for the cross, but I rarely use this symbol in my art. But today I just really liked this little chipboard piece, so I replicated it with clay as best I could. And I'm going to score and slip it on. I think it'd be a really pretty embellishment for this type vase. And I'll see if I can get it in frame while I put it on. And I'm going to do the same thing I did. I put a little slip, which in this case, again, I'll tell you every time, it's water. And then I'm just going to center it on the front here. And where I put the actual cross, just going to put a few marks so I know where to score. And then peel it back off. And that way, I suppose it would help if I put my glasses on. I can see where to score. I don't want that on there. There's some generous, deep, somewhat deep score marks, not too terribly deep. Good enough so that it'll have a little tooth to hold on to. And then I've already scored the back. Well, I'll do a little more of this cross. going to take my brush, brush on a little slip, and put on the cross. And I want to give a nice little firm press. Get it as straight as I can, so I can get it in frame here. There we go. I'll give it a nice little press. Probably go around the seam with the tool just to make sure it's really on there. There we go. And there is the cross embellishment now on the front. A little pock hole there. I can probably blend that out at some point. Yeah, so as far as just cleaning it up, I'm gonna wait, like I said, until it's soft leather or leather hard. It'll clean up more easily. And then the last thing I'm going to do, which is probably going to make this too tall to be in my camera, but I'm going to do my best, is I have a little pedestal here. I don't know if you can remember, but this was the bottom that I cut off. And I turned it over and I wrapped another coil around the base so that it will repeat that design that's on the collar. It's very similar to the collar piece. And then I'm just going to score and slip it onto the bottom, like so. And a little bit of slip. Center it as best I can. Oops. Like so. Give it a nice tap so it's level. And there you have it. There is my vase. It was fun. I have a little more tweaking as far as just cleaning up and making sure it's going to dry well. But thanks for playing with me, and maybe you'll be able to give this one a try. Let me know what you think, and if you have any questions. This is stoneware clay. It fires to cone 5-6, so it is not air dry or anything like that. It definitely has to be fired in a kiln, and then we glaze it.